everybody. Welcome to the WVHuddle.com Prep Football Podcast. I am Tom Bragg. Joined as always, we've got Gazette Mail Assistant Sports Editor Derek Taylor to my right, and Preps reporter Rick Ryan to my left. Ryan Pritt, the Road Warrior, is at the state golf tournament in Wheeling right now, so he won't be here today. But we're here at Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill, 218 Capitol Street in the heart of downtown Charleston. And again, I'd like to thank them before we get into everything.
Yeah, definitely. Got a good lunch.
Definitely beats recording at the office or at my house. But we'll jump right in with the games from last week. The big one, Class AAA, that we'll start out with is that Capital-Huntington game. Capital just rolled through Huntington. Derek, you were at the game. Last week we talked about when was Capital going to click? Or were they going to click? We'd seen it in spurts, be it a half or a quarter or even a series or a play, but they hadn't put it together for a whole game. Seemed like the Cougars just did whatever they wanted to Huntington.
Pretty much. Not just offensively, but you know, they had a big game on defense as well. Crunchy Bays had 15 catches and a touchdown. I can't remember the yardage on that. 180.
It was a bunch.
There?
Yeah.
Tyree Pratt threw for more than 280 yards and threw the ball a lot too. I think 28 or 29 times.
Yeah, that's not something you would see when Capital was blowing people out last year. He would have good games, but it would be, he was 9 of 11 or something like that.
Right.
And that was a big passing game for him as far as attempts go last year. But different approach for Capital?
Yeah, a good bit. I had talked to John Carpenter before the game, and he was talking about wanting to get back into what he referred to as fast break football and getting the ball out quick and letting his players make plays. We hear this from a lot of different coaches, who try to run this kind of thing. Putting up 51 points on Huntington, which is the first time anybody had scored 50 or more on them since 2010. I talked to Carp after the game. He goes, "Yeah, that's what we're going to do from now on." Now, he didn't mean score 50 points a game, but I think he feels like he found the golden ticket.
Yeah, I mean, Silas Nazario from that game, we kind of keeping with that theme of when's Capital going to click. We were kind of waiting for it to happen with him. He ended up being our WVHuddle.com Player of the Week this week. 4 touchdowns, almost 200 yards against that defense. I mean, that's one of the more impressive individual performances from anybody I've seen in a game this season.
Yeah, I believe he only had 14 carries. I think it was 14 carries.
It wasn't a lot of carries.
He had a couple long runs called back, a couple long TD runs called back for penalties, and he just kept plugging away. And Devon Adkins on defense had a huge game. 9 tackles, 6 tackles for loss, 2 sacks. It was just Capital's best performance of this season to date. I really think is the conventional opinion on that. And they're right there at number 2 again this week in the poll. I'm sure we're going to get to that in a few, but it really looks like this is the Capital that a lot of people expect to see.
Sure.
And to do it against Huntington. Yeah, that's a legit win. That's a legit game.
Yeah, you heard a lot just on Twitter and from people at games saying, this Capital team, they're going to be better than last year's team. And
that's awful hard.
Yeah, that's hard to do. And to this point, it hadn't been true. But if you get more performances like they had against Huntington, they might.
Yeah.
Might be. Capital's looming there. Yeah, well, jumping from the game you were at in Class AAA to the game you were at in Class A, we talked last week, Buffalo Tug Valley was going to be a big game. Buffalo ended up winning 19-0. It was kind of hard to get a feel on that one. I know cell service isn't all that great out at Tug Valley. You kind of had to just rely on score updates through Twitter. But you were there. You saw it with your own eyes. What did you think of the Bison going out and shutting out Tug Valley?
Well, I know that they put a lot of stock in that. They didn't like the way their season ended last year, losing to Tug in the quarterfinals. They had 5 turnovers in that game. They felt that they left their best game on the field that day. So, a lot of coaches, it was kind of refreshing. A lot of coaches, a lot of teams will say, we don't care about what happened last year. This is a new team, a new year. But Buffalo and Mike Sawyer and all the players told me that was kind of a driving force for them in the offseason and the preseason to get another chance at a team like Tug that ended their season. And the game was, I knew we were in a little bit of trouble when I got there, and it had rained all day, and it really didn't rain much during the game, but the field was muddy, and if you tried to run anything wide or anything where you had to make any cuts or pivots, it was tough. I talked to Dylan Lucas after the game. He said he couldn't do any of the juking or the jive moves that he usually does. He said everything was straight ahead. So if you could get the ball and get a little bit of open space when you're running straight ahead, like on a draw play or something, it was a lot better opportunity. And their 3 touchdowns were all runs of 33, 75, and 55 yards. So that's how they scored. But what really impressed me, I think, was their line. I wouldn't want to say it was suspect or anything, but you just wondered how they would match up against a team that had been to the semifinals last year. I know Tug's best lineman, perhaps, was in an auto accident 2 days before the game, and he wasn't there. But they didn't have much trouble. They held him to 65 total yards, and I think only about 30 of that was on the ground. So it was a pretty dominating performance.
You know, it's a shame Ryan isn't here today because the next game we're going to talk about, the game he covered, Point Pleasant, Parkersburg South, was our game of the week, the Gazette Mail poll game of the week last week. Didn't disappoint. It's a close game throughout. We kind of wondered, okay, might be the first real test for Point Pleasant as far as a AAA team that's going to battle with them. They might get in a close game. How is Point going to react? I believe you said, you know, we're going to learn something about one of these two teams, and maybe we didn't learn as much as we thought we did. I mentioned, you know, at least we know Point Pleasant can win a close game. This may be a sign that it's not the same Point Pleasant that we've gotten used to, that feasts on regular season opponents and then runs into somebody good in the playoffs and just falls apart.
Maybe I should rephrase what I said earlier on camera, but you know, maybe it's that we didn't learn what I thought we would learn about Point Pleasant this week. That's that's a big difference from not learning anything.
Fair enough.
And it's because of the valid point you bring up. I mean, they show that they can, you know, go against a playoff opponent and pull out a win in a close game.
On the road.
On the road at that. You know, I don't know what I think about Parkersburg South. That's just me. I know Garrett Gilkison is one of the state's best players. I'm still not really sure what Parkersburg South is. But, you know, I know that Point's 6-0 now. That's what I know. You know, but from what you were saying earlier, you know, they had to change some things up and you know, actually work out a way to win that game, and it worked out in their favor.
Some other big games, I'll just rattle off the list and you guys can give thoughts. Mingo Central beats up on Wayne. I think that was the first time they've really put one on the Pioneers since they became a school a few years ago.
That's the first win.
St. Mary's beats Williamstown in Class A. That was a game with not a lot on the line outside of playoff seeding maybe, but here comes St. Mary's again all of a sudden up to number 3 in the poll this week. Kind of lurked there around the middle of things for a while, but you know, state finalist last year, but lost heartbreaker in that state title game. Maybe even should have won that game, but here they are again. What else do we have here? Any other games you guys from last week you want to get into before we do the poll?
The fact that Kaiser lost to Hampshire.
Okay, yeah, that was one we need to bring up because that was a team you had tabbed as a possible shoe-in.
I sat here last week and said,
Kaiser's
going to the semis. Okay, Kaiser lost to Hampshire. Hampshire was an 0-4 team coming into that game. Yeah. Kaiser at 5-0 coming into it. That was the first time Hampshire had beat them since 2001 when, coincidentally, Sean Beiser, Kaiser's coach now, was the head coach at Hampshire.
That was my senior year of high school, and I'm almost 32, so it's been a while.
Yeah, that was one of those games. A lot of the games in the Eastern Panhandle, eastern part of the state got moved up to early starts last Friday night. That was one of them. I think it kicked off at 5:30.
Okay.
And I don't know how that affects kids going on bus trips and whatnot. Yeah. But the bottom line was that I saw Kaiser turn the ball over a good bit, and just Hampshire held on for a win, and that throws things. Along with Bluefield's loss to Richlands, Virginia, that throws things up in the air a lot for AA.
Yeah. Oh, and the one slipped by me because it happened Monday night. It wasn't too late to get into the poll for this week, but East Hardy loses to Pendleton County. That's going to shake some things up in Class A.
Oh, yeah. Pendleton only has one loss, right?
Yeah.
So, you want to kind of get a gauge game that you can figure out, is the team really good or are they just been beaten up on cupcakes? And that might tell you a little bit more about Pendleton.
Yeah, Pendleton lost on the road at Pocahontas County in week 3, I believe. But, they have a player, Timothy Hevner, who's been around and a starter for the last couple of years at quarterback, and he's kind of like a do-it-all kind of player for them, and he's a senior now. Pendleton's 5-1 now, so as I said like last week about there only being 11 teams getting votes in single A, maybe there should be more than that. Maybe Pendleton's somebody we should be keeping our eye on.
And that'll wrap it up with going over last week's games, jump into this week's Gazette Mail football poll, and of course that East Hardy game was on Monday night, so that was after the poll was put together, so that game won't be reflected in Class A. But starting with Class AAA, number 1 Cabell Midland, the Knights received 9 of 10 first place votes. They're 6-0. They're at Huntington this week, but that game's actually on Saturday. Marshall plays at home against Southern Mississippi on Friday night, so the Knights and the Highlanders going to get the stage to themselves on Saturday. At number 2, we mentioned Capital. The Cougars are 5-1. Off this week, at GW next week. I imagine we will get into that at length on next week's episode.
A little bit.
Yeah. At number 3, Point Pleasant, the Big Blacks received the other first-place vote in Class AAA. They're 6-0, and they host Oak Hill this week. Number 4, Martinsburg. Bulldogs just creeping up there. It was a couple weeks ago we were talking about, why isn't Martinsburg in the poll? It's so weird we haven't seen them. Now here they are, 4-2. They're at number 4. They're off this week at Hedgesville on Eastern Panhandle Showdown on October 16th. Right behind them, Morgantown, 5-1. Their only loss was to Martinsburg a couple weeks ago. And, Morgantown had quarterback issues in that. I believe Logan Holgerson, Dana Holgerson's son, who's either a freshman or a sophomore, has not played much, had to come in that game, and they kept it close. So, maybe Morgantown's quarterback is in that game. It goes a little different. But nonetheless, Mohicans 5-1. They've got a big one this week. They host Wheeling Park. So we'll see what happens with Wheeling Park after their starters got 3 3/4 rest last week at St. Albans, and we'll touch on that in just a little bit, maybe in our last segment. At number 6, George Washington, another team that came from outside of the poll earlier in the season, has kind of climbed up into the middle of things. Patriots are 4-1. They were off last week. They host Hurricane this week. I'll just stop there for a second, but Rick, we kind of talked about this a little bit in the office yesterday, and you and I have talked about this. This is, the preliminaries, I guess, are over for GW. This back half of the schedule's stacked. You got Hurricane this week, Capital the week after that. You still got to play South Charleston. You still got to play Cabell Midland. Yeah, they're 4-1. Yeah, they're number 6 in the poll. I know they've been in the power rankings and other polls. They've been moving up there too, but we'll see what GW really has to offer this week, and I think they match up really well with Hurricane. What GW does and what Hurricane doesn't do, I think things might go really well for GW and not so great for Hurricane this week. You guys got any thoughts on GW before we go on here?
Well, Derek and I talked last year that the GW Hurricane game, we saw both of them being like a 5-5, 6-4 team, and we thought the winner of that game would probably go playoffs and the loser wouldn't. That's exactly what happened. And I'm kind of getting that feeling again this year, just because Hurricane's got South Charleston and Midland coming up. GW's got Capital, Midland, Spring Valley, and South Charleston. You got to figure a couple losses in there. We might be back to where we were last year.
At number 7 this week, Huntington, the Highlanders are 5-1. That one loss, of course, coming to Capital last week. Dropped down from number 4, so not too big of a fall for that lopsided loss. I think maybe the voters took into account that this is the Capital team maybe they were expecting all year long. But the Highlanders, like I said, 5-1 down from number 4 last week at they host Cabell Midland on Saturday. At number 8, Wheeling Park, 3-1-1, dropped one spot after being tied for 7th last week. They're at Morgantown this week, and I'll just go ahead and do the thing now, but Wheeling Park played at St. Albans last week, and we all know the weather was terrible the back half of last week, so there was mud everywhere, but it didn't look like St. Albans had cut their grass in a month.
Since Derek Christian left?
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm all for some gamesmanship, and if you can get a little advantage, take it, but that just seemed awfully Bush League to me. Just, Wheeling Park's kids, they jumped out 27-0 on St. Albans. There were still 5 minutes left in the first quarter, I think, and they're pulling their starters off. Savion Johnson's coming off the field. He'd scored 3 touchdowns and ran for over 100 yards at that point. And why wouldn't you? You don't blame the Wheeling Park staff at all. You don't want your guys getting hurt in a situation like that. And you mentioned before that you had seen something similar Riverside with Capital last year, and it's like, is that really what you think is going to make the difference in this game? I don't know. Didn't like the grass treatment at St. Albans last week. Maybe they found a mower with the nice weather this week.
Perhaps.
But I digress. At number 9 in Class AAA, South Charleston. They were off last week too. They're 2-3, under 500 at Ripley. They kind of. It doesn't seem like it should be this way with South Charleston, because we talk about how good they are every week, and I know they've been hit with injuries, but South Charleston doesn't have a whole lot of games left that it can lose. Remaining on its schedule.
No. Winfield's after Ripley.
Yeah, Winfield's after Ripley. I mean, they're very, very winnable games, but they've got to win these. And again, we were talking before the show here. Was it 2 years ago? South Charleston had a must-win to get into the playoffs, and they go up to Ripley that just wasn't very good that year, and they lost.
Yep.
So it wouldn't be unprecedented for a South Charleston team.
I think that was Messengers last year.
It might have. They're just
because
3 years ago. Okay, it's been in the last couple of years, but they're just decimated by injury right now. I know last week you said Pitts would be back by the end of the season. Fred Crozier's got a broken foot, and
he'll be back.
Is he going to come back?
Yeah, I messed that up.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, Pitts should be back earlier. It's Crozier that should be back for the playoffs with the foot. Yeah.
So
but you got to wonder how much it's going to affect his speed. I mean, it's not like a wide receiver coming back from an elbow injury or something. I mean, probably
you
foot.
can't work on it while you're rehabbing.
Yeah.
So.
And wrapping up the Class AAA poll for this week, at number 10, Jefferson. The Cougars not rated last week. They host Spring Mills. They've got the reigning Moss Award winner, Christian Johnson.
Yep.
I think he's about as, I don't want to say shoe-in, but man, someone's going to have to do something crazy at wide receiver the rest of the way to maybe wrestle that one away from him. Others receiving votes in Class AAA, Brooke, Parkersburg South, Spring Valley, and John Marshall. Any impressions, thoughts on AAA before we go to AA, guys?
I'm keeping my eye on Brooke. I mean, it looks like they got another solid win this week going to Indian Creek, which is in Wintersville, Ohio. The back half of their schedule is tough too. Starting it off with a win against Indian Creek is a good. I mean, they're 4-2 now, and I think Brooke might be better than a lot of people expected them to be.
Yeah,
this
4-2, and their losses are Huntington and Hurricane. No, they beat Hurricane. Excuse me.
Huntington and Morgantown.
That's the other one. All right, so in Class AAA, same as it ever was. Number 1, Bridgeport, receiving all 10 first place votes. The words are hard sometimes. I apologize. It's a big game for Bridgeport this week, but maybe a bigger game for the team they're playing, Kaiser. They're coming off of that loss last week to Hampshire that we touched on. It kind of has that big game feel. I know they've played in the regular season the last couple of years as two teams that have been successful in the playoffs in Class AA, but you got to wonder if Kaiser's going to have that hangover coming off a game that everybody had picked them to win.
Right.
I know it's hard to not get up when you're playing a team like Bridgeport, but you wonder if maybe they'll have their heads down a little bit still coming off of that last one, and that's not a good recipe to win a game when you're going to Bridgeport. At number 2, and another one we talked about a little bit before the show, Fairmont Senior. The Polar Bears have very quietly snuck up the poll this year, undefeated at 5-0, jumped from number 4 last week, at University this week. That's always been a big game for those two teams. They're close in proximity. I know it's not the name school, Morgantown or Clarksburg schools or Bridgeport, but these are teams that have played a lot over the years. I know they're in different classes, but
now,
yeah.
they were members of the NCAC together, so they played every year as a conference game there for a while. And they're old members. They were both, I believe, University used to be in the Big Ten back in back when they used to be AA. They've been playing each other for a long time. And like I said last week, I think this is a trap game for Fairmont Senior. You know what? If I'd be picking, I'd just roll the dice a little bit and call University on this one.
At number 3, Tulsa, another team that has slowly climbed the Gazette Mail football poll this year. The Rebels 6-0, coming off the shutout win at Sissonville, or at Scott this week. At number 4, Bluefield, coming off that first loss of the season against Richlands, Virginia. Beavers are 5-1 at number 4, dropping down from number 2. They've got the week off, then October 23rd. Do they have 2 weeks off?
Yes, they do. Yep.
That's odd. Can we get into that a little bit?
The one's their bye week, and they only have 9 games.
Okay, so they just stacked them back to back?
Yeah, it just ended up that way.
That's unconventional. You don't see that a whole lot. Well, the Beavers are off for 2 weeks, and they play at Hoke Hill on October 23rd. Number 5 in Class AA, Chapmanville. The Tigers are 6-0, up 1 spot from number 6 last week. At Man this week. That's, separate classes, man single A, but that is a big game for both teams. Rick, you mentioned that earlier as a game you were keeping an eye on. These are 2 very good teams. It's kind of a geographic rivalry thing.
Oh, sure.
This is going to be a big one down there.
Oh, yeah. I like to keep my eye on maybe one small school game a week, and I think this is the one here. Both these teams have quarterbacks who've been playing for 3 years. John Thomas, Keffer at Man, Alex Berry at Chapmanville. So both offenses should be running pretty smoothly. You got an experienced guy back there. So, I guess everybody has turf field down there now. So shouldn't be any problem with the field conditions. So it was an overtime game last year, so I'm expecting a little more of the same.
Yeah, and Man already has a win over AAA Logan. I know Logan maybe not quite as good as Chapmanville this year, but Man, they schedule up. They schedule up. That's for sure. Moving on, at number 6 in Class AA, James Monroe, the Mavericks 5-0 at Westside this week. At number 7, Mingo Central, we mentioned earlier, coming off that lopsided win against Wayne. Miners are 4-1 at Poca this week. Yikes! Sorry, Poca.
Yeah.
At number 8, Kaiser 5-1 at Bridgeport, dropping way down from number 3 last week.
Isn't that interesting? How Bluefield dropped 2 and we dropped Kaiser all the way down to 8.
Don't lose to Hampshire.
Yeah.
At number 9, Robert C. Byrd, the Eagles 3-2 at East Fairmont on October 9th.
Which is Friday.
Which is this week. That's,
curveball there.
Noted for next week. And wrapping up Class AA, Weir at 5-1, staying at number 10 for the second week in a row. They are at Magnolia, Class A number 1 team. Others receiving votes in AA: Lincoln, Roane County, and Summers County. Derek, we kind of touched on this a little bit in previous podcasts about how the semifinal teams in AA, and maybe there's 3 that you might be able to write in. But I'm starting to be of the belief that it's Bridgeport and everybody else that's playing for second place right now. And I certainly can be wrong, and there's a lot of football left, but it seems like we're finding the imperfections in the other teams, and Bridgeport keeps scoring 50 and 60 points a week on people. It's theirs to kind of lose at this point, as much as it can be for the way football works.
As much as you hate to say it, but I think that's the truth of the matter. I mean, they're just so experienced, they're so deep. And, I don't know. I don't see many, openings in the armor there.
It seems like it might take one of those Bridgeport plays their worst game of the season, and whoever beats them plays the best game they've ever played before type thing. But
we've seen that before.
You see that happen though. So, but anyway, in Class A, number 1 Magnolia, they receive all 10 votes, 6-0. They host Weir this week. At number 2, Moorfield, also 6-0, also remaining at number 2 this week. They are off at East Hardy next week on October 16th. At number 3, St. Mary's, moving up from number 5 after that win against Williamstown. They're 5-0. They're at Calhoun County. At number 4, Man, the Hillbillies, as we mentioned, have that game against Chapmanville this week from Class AA. They are 5-0, also remaining at number 4 for a consecutive week. Number 5, Wheeling Central. They played Lindsley last week, and we weren't really sure what kind of Lindsley team had.
Right.
Wheeling Central just ran all over them. Just blew them up, moving up 1 spot from number 6 last week. They host Shadyside, Ohio. They've got that loss on the schedule, but again, Wheeling Central looming there.
Right.
The bottom half of the teams that might end up with home games in Class A. At number 6, Buffalo, that we mentioned, went and shut out Tug Valley on the road, 19-0. A game Rick covered. Bison are up from number 7 at Work County this week. At number 7, Williamstown, they're off this week, and they're at Work County next week. They're 4-2, but they dropped from number 3 last week, so pretty steady fall there for Williamstown. At number 8, East Hardy, and this we mentioned, the poll happened before their game on Monday. They are 4-1 now after that loss to Pendleton County, and we've got, since the poll came out before that game, they're at Pendleton County. Off the top of my head, I don't know who they play this week.
I can't remember if it's Covington, Virginia, or, go ahead with it and I'll try to find it. How's that?
All right. Well, we're kind of close to the end, so hurry.
All right.
Tied with East Hardy at number 8 in Class A this week. South Harrison, the Hawks, are tied for number 8. They are 5-0, up from the 10 spot last week at Webster County this week. And into the poll. Is this the first time Bishop Donahue's been in the poll this year?
No.
I knew they had been close. But Bishop Donahue wrapping up Class A at number 10. They are 6-0, not rated last week at Clay Battelle. Other teams receiving votes in Class A, Tug Valley. You mentioned last week, Derek, that you're kind of getting a clearer picture of Class A because there's only 11 teams receiving votes. But after you see some of the results we've seen the last couple weeks, maybe the poll voters might need to take a broader look at Class A, because you're seeing Pendleton County, teams like that aren't receiving votes and they're winning games against top 10 teams convincingly. It's
well.
I'll let you go on that.
I'll tell you that I think there's 2 Class A's anymore, and
don't say public and private.
No. The 4 class people are going to love this, but you look at Magnolia's schedule, and as we talked, by the end of the year, 7 of their 10 games are going to come against teams that would qualify for the West Virginia playoffs. You figure River and Monroe Central Ohio would both be in there. Shadyside's off this year, and Greenbrier West isn't what it usually is this year either. And Lindsley, obviously, we just spoke about them. And then you have teams, smaller schools, that basically play other smaller schools and can put together a compelling record, but are they can you compare a 5-1 from a smaller school that plays a schedule like that versus a 6-0, 6-0, 5-0 from Magnolia, Moorfield, and St. Mary's? It's really difficult to kind of tell. East Hardy plays Tucker County this week, by the way. Just look that up. And sometimes with a Pendleton County or schools like that, who isn't used or who's not commonly in that top 8, I think it takes a while for us to kind of be able to put them to a litmus test, you know, and they passed that this week, well, Monday night by beating East Hardy. So, you know, like I said, I think there's 2 different levels in Class A, and you got to make a jump from the lower to the other one that would be higher to kind of, you know, be considered more frequently. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it goes.
Any last thoughts on Class A, Rick, before we move on?
No, I kind of agree with what Derek said. 2-class Class A. I mean, you could say the same thing in Double A. There's Bridgeport at its level, and then everybody else at another level.
Yep.
All right, well, that'll move us on to our next segment. And Derek, you kind of came at me with this idea. We're going to look at maybe I don't want to put a number on it, but 5, 6, a handful of the most surprising results that we've had so far this season. There's not really an official midpoint of the season, an 11-week season. You know, it'd be like last Wednesday or something like that.
Right.
But at this point, we're going into week 7. There's 5 weeks of the regular season left. Everybody's either played 5 games or they've played 4 and had a bye. So for our purposes, we're going to call it the midpoint of the season. Game you mentioned off the top of the list was that Huntington lost to Capital, just the lopsided nature of it. This is kind of your thing. What games were you looking at, and why did they surprise you?
Well, I also included that Pendleton win over East Hardy. No, I'm not going to get any more into that. We already talked about it. But there's 3 others that I have on this list along with the Capital Huntington game. And one is Tulsa's win over Wayne to start off the year that nobody, I think, expected. And, you know, beyond that, what we've learned is that, okay, that wasn't a 1-week aberration. You know, Tulsa's really good, but what got everybody's attention was that, of course, opening win against Wayne.
Yeah, if that game had been this week, people might not have been surprised at all if Tulsa beat Wayne.
Right. The other one, I think, I spoke about Brooke a little bit earlier, but their win against Wheeling Park at Wheeling, and that had been the first time in a while that Park had lost at home.
Yeah,
Park was getting all kind of, you know.
It was right after Capital had lost. They were like, oh well, maybe Wheeling Park's the best team in the state.
And, I mean, they came into this season. I mean, it's not just media. I've talked to coaches in the preseason who were the teams outside of here that you're looking at are going to be contender. And to a man, every one of them included Wheeling Park in their short list. Yeah. You come up with Brooke getting a win there, and you start thinking, okay, the Bruins might be back.
There was a couple of MSAC coaches having to fill that spot in their schedule with Princeton leaving.
Yeah.
I know St. Albans kind of fell on the grenade for the rest of the conference there, but you know, these teams had the option of playing Wheeling Park, and they said, no, we'll play somebody else. So that might tell you what you need to know about what people thought about Wheeling Park coming into the season.
And there was one other that I have, and it's Martinsburg's 17-16 win over Morgantown.
Okay, we mentioned that one a little earlier, too.
You know, Ryan Pritt covered that game, and he's, as you said, at the state golf tournament today, but he and I talked about that, and I asked him, I said, is Martinsburg, therefore, I mean, where are they? And he said, top 8, you know, but in a year, they're going to be what we all see as Martinsburg again.
Yeah.
But the fact that they had to go to the gun to get a home win against a Morgantown team that lost its starting quarterback early and was totally one-dimensional the rest of that game tells me that Martinsburg isn't what it's been.
Okay, they got some work to do.
Yeah,
Vulnerable,
you know,
maybe.
Yes, a little. I mean, what Ryan said was, you know, if you're going to get them this year. That's what we learned from Morgantown and Martinsburg.
Rick, you got here right before we started recording, so we didn't have time to go over this with you. But any games that he didn't mention that maybe have stuck out to you this year is surprising results or that stand out?
One thing that I can't wrap my mind around, Roane County lost its opener. And was that Calhoun or
Worth County?
And Worth has won how many games?
I think they're 2 and 3.
Okay, now Roane has looked pretty good and has won a couple decent games. But that first game, I still can't figure it out. You know, maybe if they played that this week, it'd be a different outcome. But that's, you know, you try to ratchet things in your mind, like, okay, this team beat that team, they're pretty good. This, you know, they have a loss here, but that was good. I can't draw any conclusions.
Gotcha.
Got any others?
No, that's it for me right now.
All right, well, we'll start to wrap things up here. Of course, we mentioned at the top of the show, we are at Adelphia Sports Bar and Grill at 218 Capitol Street in downtown Charleston. Yeah, they've got, go through some talking points here for sell that Adelphia stuff, man, because it's great down here. I'm not just talking, but Monday Night Football every week, happy hour drafts at 68-cent wings during the game. It's a shame that I work Mondays, where I would take advantage of that. We're having a Halloween party down here on October 30th, cash prizes and giveaways. They've got 8 lunches under $8 Monday through Friday from 11 to 2 every day. Wednesdays is rib night, and that's another one I wish I wasn't working for. They also have live music on those nights. Ladies' night every Thursday. Man, just all these nights that I would come down here having to work. We'll have to talk to the boss about that or something maybe. But ladies' nights every Thursday, half price select appetizers for everyone. Ladies get 2-for-1 drink specials. So that does not apply to any of us. Let's see, and they also just were named the best wings in the Valley for the 4th time in the last 5 years. And there's a lot of good wings in the Valley. But those Adelphia flavored wings, though, they might be my favorite. They are way up on the list. But, you know, getting back into the football, though, we've got big games coming up this week, but I kind of am I've got an eye forward. That GW Capital game, I think. GW gets through this week with Hurricane and plays the way they have so far this season. That Capital game is at GW. Could be a slower track with being on grass as opposed to the turf that Capital plays most of its games on. I kind of feel this way about the way I did with the Capital Hurricane game a few weeks ago, is that if Hurricane can keep it close, then anything can happen.
Right.
Well, of course, what happened was Capital went off in the third quarter and ended up blowing Hurricane out. But I think this GW team's a little bit better than Hurricane. They've got all kinds of weapons. They've got both quarterbacks playing real well, and Caleb Mackey and Grant Wells. They've got Drew Bowen at receiver, who is just a big dude, physical, fast, not someone you want to meet over the middle of the field. So, like I said, there's big games this week, but I kind of got an eye looking forward to next week. Anything you guys want to add before we start to wrap up here?
There's a couple big single A games next week too. I mean, Magnolia goes to St. Mary's, and it could be a potential battle of 7-0 versus 6-0 at St. Mary's new stadium. That's going to be a big ticket night up there, and it's the same night that Moorfield goes to East Hardy.
Right.
So 2 big single A games that night too. So that's not this week, but next week.
Yeah, well, what you said about GW, when you play a team, you figure you try to take away one thing or the other, but GW's got the top rusher in the MSAC, Nunu Miller, the top receiver, Drew Bowen, 2 quarterbacks in the top 8. I mean, you take away one, but the other is still so good. I can't see anybody, doing that for 4 quarters.
I've got a hunch that might be a shootout up on the hill next Friday. Of course, if you want to follow along with us next Friday or this Friday or any day, we're on Twitter at WV Huddle. You can go to the website, wvhuddle.com. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. You can follow the sports department Twitter feed at Gazmail Sports. And that's not just high school football. You got WVU, Marshall, other prep sports, state, UC, Tech, anything sports going on in the state and the Kanawha Valley, you can find it all there. And, of course, we're online at wvgazettemail.com/sports. I think that just about does it, guys. Anything we want to add before we finish up here?
I'm good.
All right, I think we're good. All right, well, thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next week, or we'll see you out at the game on Friday.